Again, the pictures that came were visuals which are what would say unparliamentary inside the Legislative Assembly, does not behove of elected representatives. Dramatic moments. Supporters of BJP MLA Gopichand Padalkar and NCP SP MLA Jitendra Awad clashing inside the Maharashtra Assembly premises. The video of the incident has now gone viral on social media. The heated confrontation follows an altercation between the two leaders a day earlier over the opening of a car door, which reportedly escalated to verbal abuse. Now on Thursday, a verbal showdown erupted between Gopichand Padalkar and Jitendra Awad at the gate of the Maharashtra Assembly, and both leaders exchanging profanities in full public view. Padalkar has also repeatedly attacked NCP SP Chief Sharad Pawar and MP Supriya Sule. Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis has reacted, saying violence and this kind of behavior inside the Vidhan Bhavan is not accepted, but this comes under the jurisdiction of the Speaker of the Assembly, and the Speaker will investigate the matter and take appropriate action against the culprits, those who are involved in this. Now look at that. It's a free-for-all, having a go at each other, pulling each other's collar, hitting each other. And then there are guards, marshals or officials, security officials who are separating everyone. Mahesh joins us with more. Yes, Mahesh.
Absolutely, Anand, and what we have been given to understand that the Speaker of the Assembly has asked for the report from the local police, especially the DCP who is in charge of the Vidhan Bhavan security, and we are expecting that by tonight or today in the morning that he will submit his report about the safety security of the MLAs and MLCs who basically are there to attend this monsoon session. But it is really sad to see that the party workers are getting first entry into the lobby, and after that they are indulging into this kind of altercation and using abusive language against each other.
Yes, and do we know who are the perpetrators? Did they have permission to be in the Vidhan Bhavan? Who initiated the violence? As Anand,
you told our viewers that this is not happening for the first time. It's from past 2 days. It is happening. Both the supporters as well as their respective leaders who are indulged into the war of words. How they got entry? They usually get entry with a yellow color pass, which MLA or the party office issued to them, and after that only they get it. So that's why we can see that there will be a restriction on the pass distribution in upcoming session, which will happen in Nagpur, and subsequently the budget session, which will happen again in 2026 in Mumbai.
Were either of the leaders present? They're not visible in the.
You can see Gopichand Padalkar over there wearing a blue shirt.
Yeah,
Gopichand Padalkar was present there, and after Nitin Deshmukh, who is a supporter of Jitendra Awad HP, the verbal abuse basically happened between Nitin Deshmukh and Gopichand Padalkar, and that's why Gopichand Padalkar's supporters indulged into this altercation with NCP SP MLA Jitendra Awad supporter. Nitin Deshmukh can be seen there, who was basically at the receiving end.
Right. Thank you for your inputs, Mahesh. But these are the scenes between these two party leaders, two different factions. Maharashtra right now, it's a big gondhal. That means it's all chaotic. Political alignments can shift overnight. Now let's get to that now. This is a big buzz. A day after Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis made a public invitation to Uddhav Thackeray to cross over back into the NDA, come back into the treasury benches, and this was in the House. The UBT chief and chief minister met. They met in Vidhan Bhavan. It was a 20-minute meet. The meeting took place in the office of the Legislative Council Chairman Shinde. This meeting lasted about 20 minutes. Now on Thursday, speaking during the farewell ceremony of MLC Ambadas Danve, Devendra Fadnavis, while addressing Uddhav Thackeray, who was also in the house, said this.
आता उद्धवजी 29 पर्यंत तर काही स्कोप नाही. पण ऐका 29 पर्यंत आम्हाला तिकडे याचा स्कोप उरला नाही. 29 तुम्हाला इकडे याचा स्कोप आता विचार करता येईल, म्हणजे त्याचा विचार आपण वेगळ्या पद्धतीने करू, पण आम्हाला तिकडे याचा स्कोप हा काही या ठिकाणी उरलेला नाही.
So till 29 in Marathi, that was what was being said. Till 29, our coming to that side is not going to happen. You are coming over here, we will try and figure out this is not the place. We will have to figure out other ways, in different ways to look at it and to try and consider that. So this is an open suggestion, even though said in jest on the floor of the House. Now this suggestion by Fadnavis was ignored by Uddhav Thackeray and his party. And they brushed it off, saying that, oh, just happens, it is good that there is banter on the floor of the House and it's not rude, it's still polite and civil. But political rumblings are underway in the state given the political shrinkage of the Uddhav Sena and its inability to gather all traditional Sena voters. First, there is the ideological dissonance within the Mahavikas Aghadi itself. Let us look at some of the key issues. First up, Hindutva. Congress party's secular ideology conflicts with Uddhav Sena's Hindutva legacy, and they have had to hugely dilute their position to justify their alliance with the Congress and the NCP. On the issue of Veer Savarkar, there is a huge rift. Rahul Gandhi repeatedly ridiculed Savarkar while the Sena has demanded Bharat Ratna for him. When I say Sena, UBT. Now, Hindi imposition. Congress was missing from the Sena UBT rally opposing Maharashtra government's three-language policy. The Maratha identity politics, the hardened stand of Sena UBT clashes with Congress's pan-Indian diverse linguistic identity. That any buzz for re-entry of Uddhav Thackeray could also be seen as an alliance management strategy by the BJP. It may intend to further weaken the MV alliance by poaching its biggest constituent. There are reports of Shinde faction unhappy with the alliance since the last assembly polls. Shinde Sena or the Shiv Sena is facing controversies involving Sena leader Sanjay Gaikwad, who assaulted an MLA canteen staff on camera, Minister Sanjay Shirshat, who is facing corruption allegations. Meanwhile, Fadnavis has reversed several of Shinde's decisions as Chief Minister, ordering contract enquiries in tender processes. So there is one talk within the Mahayuti that Eknath Shinde may be sidelined. The need for a Thackeray presence ahead of the municipal elections is important. Uddhav Thackeray and that faction has been signalling a way back into the NDA for a while now. So amidst all this, Devendra Fadnavis says this, that for you to come back here, we can look at options. Now, whether that is in jest in Maharashtra, a jest can always become serious and serious can always become an alliance and perhaps political shifting sands. Now, question remains, is the political ground set for a re-entry for Uddhav Thackeray into the NDA camp? Now, we have to also say, as we say, good evening to all our guests, doing Sena national spokesperson of the BJP, Sushi Ben Shah, spokesperson of Shiv Sena, and Sajid Supariwala, leader of UBT, Sanjay Jha, author and political analyst. My namaste to everybody. Jai Hind. Now, we have to also say that Uddhav Thackeray and Aaditya Thackeray said we actually went to present a compilation of Marathi writers and authors and opinion on the three-language policy, and that was the only submission. There were others present there. Nothing was spoken about. But where they say there was nothing that happened, Sanjay Jha, something is always happening.
Anand, good evening to you and to my fellow panelists. I have met all of them, so hello everybody. A quick response to your question. Please remember that history cannot be obliterated, and you know it, the panelists know it, and the viewers know it, as to the extremely sleazy, crude and repugnant manner in which the Bharatiya Janata Party used Operation Lotus, Operation Kamal, to break the Thackeray family's party, which was the Shiv Sena. And I don't want to go back into it. It is probably going to be recorded in India's political history as one of its darkest periods, where Amit Shah was being lauded as a Chanakya, using the powers of the ED and the CBI and the income tax. And I don't know what other strategies were used, what other allurements or enforcements were done. Let's put that aside. The truth is that I don't think, no matter how much we speculate, I don't think Uddhav Thackeray and now with Raj Thackeray and he coming together are ever going to be able to live down or forgive the betrayal done by the BJP and the Eknath Shinde faction. A lot of the water will be clearer, Anand. You have lived in Mumbai. I live here as we talk, as do the other panelists, I'm assuming, that a lot of the water will be probably cleaner or muddier as it probably will play out is when the BMC elections come around the corner and the results are declared. And I do think that for the UBT, it's going to be the acid test or the litmus test, because this is the real formidable bastion of the Shiv Sena, is really truly Mumbai and a significant part of Konkan. And I do believe, and Thane, etc. So I do believe that there is going to be a big, formidable contest. But the question of the Thackeray family ever realigning with Eknath Shinde Well, maybe that could happen depending upon if they are willing to forgive and forget. But the BJP has effectively abandoned the entire Shiv Sena. You got to say that using their dubious methods, they have destroyed the Shiv Sena. Look at the oddity today. That even my good friend Susi Ben Shah will know that today, if the BJP wants, they can dump Eknath Shinde Shiv Sena because they don't need those numbers. They have Ajit Pawar's faction. They're happy and home and
Sir,
dry.
you know, what happens with Maharashtra politics is no political party can take chuski on the other because it comes right back. You know, if a Sharad Pawar can break away from the Congress and then align with the Congress party, anything can happen. Anything can happen. With, you know,
I
a
agree.
Shiv Sena,
I agree with that.
a Shiv Sena that use profanities against the Congress and vice versa, under Balasaheb Thackeray and also under Uddhav Thackeray, can align with the Congress and then work with them in a MVA, anything can happen, sir.
Sure, I agree. Anand, let me give you one more example.
I'm just saying,
Just one more
please tell,
example.
I have to complete the sentence.
Yeah, yeah, no,
I'm
just
not
one
being
example
charitable
is
to any party here.
because
And
that
if the
party is not
BJP,
represented here.
if the BJP,
one minute.
Sir, if
The reason why I'm insisting on making this point is because you haven't got NCP here, but Narendra Modi said,
That's exactly what I was about to say. You didn't allow me to complete. Yeah, you didn't allow me to complete. That if a BJP can accept an alliance with Ajit Pawar, then anything in Maharashtra politics can happen. So I am not being charitable to anybody. This is Maharashtra politics, sir. If Mr. Sharad Pawar said nothing is happening, we know something is happening. And any politician in Maharashtra, when they say nothing is happening, something is happening. So in Sena, what is happening?
Namaste Anandji, namaste everybody. You know, we have an extremely potent winning combination in BJP, Eknath Shindeji's Shiv Sena and Ajit Pawar's party. So I don't see, we don't change winning combinations. What Devendra ji said on the floor of the House was in light-hearted manner. He was basically showing the mirror. He was, giving a reality check to Uddhav ji. He stated a fact that there is no way we can be on the other side for the next 5 years. But yes, if you want, there is a possibility. Now, over here, you need to realize, why did we have to part ways with Uddhav Sena? Because Uddhav Sena discarded the ideals of Balasaheb Thackeray. So for us to even consider that, they will have to embrace the ideals of Balasaheb Thackeray once again. What does that mean? They will have to stop peddling the Congress line on Operation Sindoor, where people like Sanjay Raut and Kishore Tiwari virtually cast aspersions on our armed forces. They will have to stop casting aspersions on, constitutional bodies like the Election Commission. They will have to stop taking the same line as AI171 on Waqf Amendment Act. So, first of all, there is no question of any realignment, and even for us to even remotely consider that, they will have to embrace the ideals of Balasaheb Thackeray, because the main reason why we have to part ways was, it was Eknath Shinde who was following the ideals of
If he will not embrace it, who will? And if an Ajit Pawar can embrace the NDA ideologies, then Balasaheb can always...
has already embraced.
Always. So,
we do not need to embrace...
Eknath Shinde ji is the inheritor of Balasaheb Thackeray's legacy, which he has proved through deeds and actions.
Sir, with the lot of respect for Eknath Shinde ji and Uddhav Thackeray, Eknath Shinde ji is also a grassroots worker of Balasaheb. He is also... So there is no... He never left that in the first place. So that's one part. See, and I have to save this image because we have SS from SS and SS from SS who may be on different sides of the spectrum today, but tomorrow they may be batting for the same side. We don't know. It's possible. But Sajid Supariwala, first you and then Susi Ben, I'll come to you towards the end. You'll get, please, thank you for your patience. But yes, Sajid Supariwala, what is happening?
To my friend Tohin over here.
Interestingly, Sajid, I have to say, this three-language ka jo booklet that Uddhav Sahib today gave to Devendra Fadnavis, that entire file was signed by Uddhav ji only. Where it all started, that file was signed by Uddhav ji. Anyway, please go ahead.
Yeah, Anand, first I'll reply to Tohin Sharma about the principles of Balasaheb. We do not need to take or borrow or steal principles. We are the real, having the legacy of Balasaheb Thackeray, because Uddhav Sahib Thackeray today is Uddhav Sahib Balasaheb Thackeray only. Nobody can change the fact. A father doesn't need to teach his son how to take the legacy ahead. It is in the blood. So don't teach us that we have left the principle of Aaditya Thackeray. Putting that side aside, I've already said what I wanted to say in one sentence only. And your whatever ammunition you are throwing at us is set aside. Now let's talk about the first standard. Never, Uddhav Sahib has never said that implement Hindi in the first standard itself. That is the reason we stood against it. Imposition of a language in the school books for the first standard students was very difficult because the rural Maharashtra, Marathi speaking children would not be able to easily talk or learn Hindi at that tender age. We said that you can start it after the 5th standard or the 4th standard, respectively. Secondly, what about those things where in the past also Balasaheb Thackeray has always stood up for the Marathis? Today also he has stood up for the Marathi. Uddhav Sahib is doing the same thing. On those lines only Raj Sahib came on the same stage. Now let me tell you, the imposition of any language, be it Marathi, Hindi, violently, never ever we have tried to do it. Only people who must have insulted a language, they have got a befitting reply. But in the eyes of the law, you should not take the law in your hands. That we are standing by today also. As per the language is concerned, definitely imposition of any language.
This is not the language debate. This is about whether or not Uddhav
because you said about the language, the third language.
Uddhav Thackeray is open to this invitation.
No, I'll tell you the reason. See, everything was said in a very healthy manner. And when the monsoon session was going on, people were gathering in the Vidhan Sabha and having a very good time after a long time, because the enmity, the animosity and whatever differences was there, they kept it aside, and he respected the CM as a CM and he went and met him. It's a very nice thing and I think it's very positive. Uddhav Sahib Thackeray has taught the world today that being in the opposition also, how respectfully to respect a person, to meet a person or a colleague or a friend.
So you have to be charitable and you have to be gracious enough to give that compliment, extend that compliment to Devendra Fadnavis also, because he's also met him with that.
Absolutely. Very nicely met.
Okay. So Shiv, if this happens, then what happens?
That is a decision. In democracy, everyone can take their own decisions.
Because soon after that, Eknath Shinde ji had a meeting with all the MLAs. Soon after this meeting happened, there was a meeting there. What happened there?
We are all getting ready to win the BMC elections, hand down, to ensure that the Shiv Sena Bhagwa once again is on the BMC headquarters. But good evening to all. That's the opening statement. But good evening to all. And my dear colleague and friend of many years, Sanjay Bhai, the Congress does not need a Operation Lotus. You see the condition of the Congress party in the Mumbai. It is voiceless, it is leaderless, it is completely marginalized. Soon, the same will be the case in Maharashtra. So let us not talk about Lotus. You spend about 3 minutes just talking about Operation Lotus. So I thought I must give it a befitting reply. Having said that, as far as the Mahavikas Aghadi is concerned, they are complete bigadi. There is no more Mahavikas Aghadi. There is only Mahavivad Aghadi. As far as we are concerned, we are firmly on the saddle. Working for the progress of Maharashtra, prosperity of Maharashtra, and working for the welfare and the poor and the marginalized. What Shri Devendra Fadnavis ji said was in a lighter vein. It was a friendly banter. But everything need not be seen with a political lens. Let us understand that.
See,
as far as Ubata is concerned,
please complete.
As far as Shiv Sena, I've nicely heard everyone. As far as Shiv Sena is concerned, the maximum incoming is to the Shiv Sena. More than 50 to 60 MLAs of
the original Shiv Sena.
Hold on, Mr. Gentleman, I nicely heard you. Come on, same courtesies. We don't want discussion just on the issue.
We don't want to see what happened in Vidhan Bhavan. Let's go.
With you being as an anchor, that's not going to happen, I'm sure. But coming back to this, as far as we are concerned, we are firmly on the saddle. We have 60 of Shiv Sena people. Ubata, erstwhile Shiv Sena, with Ubata, corporators have come to us. I mean, they might say whatever they have to, but the fact that people are deserting you, the people are leaving you, they are coming and joining a dedicated common man a party run by a dedicated common man. Yesterday, it was a very historic occasion for Maharashtra. Baba Saheb Ambedkar's grandson, I would say Anand Rajji Ambedkar, tied Republican Sena, tied hands with Shiv Sena. We are emerging as a solid force.
So Eknath Shinde ji is not getting sidelined.
One second. Anandji, let the bow and the arrow is with us. We have the maximum
Anandji,
mandate.
We
represented 80, we won 60 of the seat. In the Mahayuti, we have the highest strike rate. The people have decided that you go with all Marathi people.
See, state elections, Sushi please, you also understand, state elections are different, municipal elections are different, and Tuhin Sinha, the astitwa, the coffers or the sustenance, the source of sustenance for the Shiv Sena, erstwhile Shiv Sena, United Shiv Sena. One minute, Sushi, I'm just saying that it is also the BMC coffers. The revenue that the BMC generates, the amount of money, that was what was the source of sustenance for the Shiv Sena, and these municipal body elections are important for all the regional parties. So there will be no Agadi. Congress wants to fight on its own, NCP Sharad Pawar wants to fight on its own, Mahayuti may be together. But is this the crux? That the astitwa of some of the regional parties depends on their success in the municipal council, and the Thackeray's, Tuhin Sena, I'm asking you this question purposely, and the Thackeray's want this control in BMC. It's important.
I can
tell you that,
Sushiban, I'll come to you next. I'll make it up to you. 1 minute.
I can tell you that with the resounding win that we have achieved in the last assembly elections in November, the BMC election is not going to be any different.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know, if you travel across the wards, especially in the suburbs, the support of Uddhav Sena has dwindled to an extent where they will face a washout even in the BMC election. So, it is mainly the media outside.
You're welcome to disagree.
You have a right not to agree. Fair enough. Have I asked you to agree with me? You have no obligation to agree with me. Fair enough. So it is mainly the media, the media which has been taking forward the age-old notion that if it is Mumbai BMC, obviously the Uddhav Sena is a strong contender, but that is not the case over here. The number of compromises they have made in the last 6 years, starting 2019, they have lost all credibility, and I can tell you they are not a force. So I don't think this band. And secondly, you have been talking about the theory of Eknath Shinde ji being sidelined. Please understand that after the massive win that we got last year, the media had to fetch some issues which could keep the momentum, which could keep people people busy. I don't think, the kind of wonderful equation which Devendra ji and Eknath Shinde share, I am aware of it. People in our party are aware of it. There will be absolutely no change in this alignment, in this alliance for the next 5 years and beyond.
I'll tell you what, at these times, it is okay to make statements, but don't make prophetic statements, especially with Maharashtra politics. It is dangerous for everybody. Please accept it in the spirit with which I am telling you. Yes, Sushi Bencha?
No, I will just tell you this, that we are a natural alliance. So there is no iota of doubt. You see, here we have Ubata, who makes compromises for power, for politics, for what you have.
We are making compromises.
We see in the Parishad, what is happening in the Parishad, right, for the leader of the opposition.
Look who's talking.
Congress has the highest MLC.
I would like to reply.
Look at Ubata making a run for the leader of the opposition. That is just not done. Also, what is the condition currently of Ubata? And so sorry to say of Shri Uddhav Thackeray. They're hanging by a thread. They're just trying to keep their head above water. There is a desperate plea to join people, having a Yuti, having an Agadi. They are all out saying that the alliance is done. But the cousin, tight-lipped, warning each and every Mansainik to keep their mouth shut, to not talk about alliance, because he knows that 2 weak alliance don't make us one strong alliance.
Right. Okay. I have limited time, just last 30 seconds. Yes, Sajid Supariwala, I promised you a rebuttal, please. Sanjay ji, I won't have time to come back to you again,
thread
but
that
we'll make
you're
it up to you
talking
soon.
about,
Ji.
the thread that you're talking about, we are hanging with a thin thread. Your own leaders, your own alliance is trying to pull the thread, pulling the
You leave
strings.
that to us.
Secondly,
Okay,
now
no,
let me
Sushil,
speak.
don't interrupt him. It's his 30 seconds.
Now let me speak.
It's his 30 seconds, please. Yeah.
Secondly, there is no reason for us to be bothered. You have been delaying the elections for the corporation. We were ready from the start.
That is a different debate.
Tomorrow the elections happen.
That was in the Supreme Court.
I have to move on. I wish everybody all the best. Please don't go hard at each other too long, because shifting sands in Maharashtra, you may be on the same side very, very soon. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Well, it's going to be a week since the release of the preliminary report on the crash of Air India 171, AI171. The AAIB's preliminary report has faced criticism from airline officials and experts, saying that it selectively gave a single sentence from the cockpit voice recorder, which has added suspicion over the role of pilots while giving no other details. The report also references a 2018 FAA advisory that warned of possible disengagement of the fuel switch locking mechanism, but as per experts, it lacks comprehensive data and appears to rely selectively on paraphrased cockpit voice recordings to suggest pilot error and question the professional competence and integrity of the flight crew. Now, here's how the international media is treating this case. 17th of July 2025, Wall Street Journal says Air India crash probe focuses on actions of plane's captain. July 14, 2025, New York Post doomed Air India pilots' medical records probed amid reports of depression, other mental health struggles. July 12, 2025, The Guardian, why did he cut off? What the report on the Air India Flight 171 crash found. You see the headlines, it's pushing a particular narrative. That's what we're trying to highlight in international media. July 12th, The Telegraph, Air India pilot asked why fuel had been cut off moments before fatal crash. July 11th, 2025, New York Post, Air India pilots may have made fatal error before crash that killed more than 270 people, probe reveals. Did the probe really reveal that? Or is it a particular narrative that is being deliberately pushed at the influence of one of the entities involved? That's a very big question. Now, this has posed questions on the influence of Boeing, which is an aviation behemoth, and the operations that get affected of the wake of such air disasters. Here's an overview of Boeing business. Revenue in 2023 at $77.79 billion, 16.79% increase to the previous year. Commercial airplanes in 2023 at $22.9 billion, 34.4% of the total revenue. Defense and space and security in 2023 at $23.9 billion, 36% of the total revenue. Global services in 2023 at $20 billion, 30.1% of the total revenue. Global reach, customers and partners in 150 countries, operations in 65 countries. Fleet forecast, 50,000 by 2044. Developing markets driving the growth. Market share 40.6% in the global airplane manufacturing entire pie. The aviation giant has a global reach with hundreds of orders across the globe, the bulk of over 1,700 from the United States, with India coming in at second with 446 airplanes ordered by Bharat itself, followed by Qatar, UAE, Turkey, Singapore, the United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, Japan and Canada, spanning the entire globe. Now, if you look at the total number of aircraft that are involved there, it's nearly about 17 to 1800 aircraft, if not more, nearly 2000 aircraft, in fact, that are going to be, those are global orders between 20 and 2025 that the airline manufacturer has got. Look at what is at stake for Boeing. Now, which is why it is not the first time that pilot error is being highlighted on this air disaster. It has happened before. Kozhikode 2020, Air India Boeing 737-800 crash, 21 people were killed. AAIB reports that the crash was due to the commander's non-adherence to SOPs. San Francisco 2013, Asiana Airlines, Boeing 777 crash, 3 people were killed and 187 injured. US investigators blame pilot mismanagement and confusion. Mangalore 2010, Air India Express, Boeing 737-800 crash, 158 people killed. Court of inquiry said captain was on a wrong flight path and delayed corrective measures, adding that the captain was disoriented and his reactions were slow. Cameroon 2007, Kenya Airways, Boeing 737-800 crash, 114 people were killed. The Cameroon Civil Aviation Authority blamed pilot error due to spatial disorientation. Now, but given the multiple questions raised, the AAIB has also set the record straight, and it has said preliminary report only explains what happened, not why. Final investigation report after the probe concludes. Premature conclusion by some international media outlets. Premature conclusions through selective and unverified reports. We urge the public and the media to avoid speculation. It is too early to reach any definite conclusions. The AAIB report with respect to the AI171 does not point to any particular person. The hard facts don't say that the pilot actually pressed or used the fuel control switches from run to cut off. The hard facts don't point to what was the nature of the transition, mechanical or manual. Yet, there are different versions, both across international media, that very conveniently try to point it towards the error of one of the pilots and, of course, the intent to try and pin it on the pilot in command or the pilot monitoring, the senior of the two, Captain Sumit Sabharwal. Let's go across to Terry Tozer, former pilot, aviation expert with us. We also have Flight Lieutenant retired Meenu Wadia, former pilot, Air India and founder, Federation of Pilots. Then we also have Captain C.S. Randhawa, President, Federation of Indian Pilots and former pilot of the Boeing 777 and former General Manager at Air India, former Deputy Chief Flight Operations Inspector at DGCA. And we also have Captain Manmat Rotre, friend and colleague of the late Captain Sumit Sabharwal. My namaste to everybody. Thank you very, very much for your time. My first question to you, Terry, have you gone through the AAIB report of AI171? Do you believe that the pilots are to blame? Is it conclusive from that report?
Yes, I have read the report. No, nothing is conclusive. We do have to remember that this is a preliminary report. And I think the fact that the cockpit voice recorder transcript clearly does not identify which pilot said which sentence is an attempt by the investigators not to unintentionally blame one person or another. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable report at this stage. Obviously, we won't get a conclusion until the report is completed.
So then is it fair for international media to blame it on the pilots, to try and point to a human error away and move the shift the attention away from a possible mechanical failure or instrument panel error?
No, I mean, it's not fair to draw any conclusion at the moment. I think what is puzzling most in the aviation community, and, with the advice of very well informed retired Boeing engineers, that they can't think of any way that a malfunction could have moved both switches 1 second apart from run to cutoff. So there is a feeling that this is likely to have been human interaction. Obviously, you can't apportion motive at this point. There's been much discussion about, was this an intentional suicide act? You can't rule that out, but equally, you can't really point the finger and say conclusively that is what happened. We just don't know.
But I have flying experience as a passenger. All 4 of our panelists have got flying experience as pilots. My humble submission to you, and I would like to ask you, Captain Randhawa, can you manually move both fuel control switches within 1 second?
Anand, you cannot move both the switches in 1 second. It's not humanly possible. Pilot reaction time given and documented by any doctor around the world or by ICAO is 2 seconds. So how can both these switches be recycled in 1 second? Point number one. The second point is that over and over again, it has been mentioned that in the preliminary report, there is no mention either on the CVR analysis or in the report itself that the pilots have moved the switches. The second important point which I'd like to tell you, that the DFDR or the black box, which they call, it is not connected to the fuel control switch. It is connected to the fuel control valve. So there is an electronic malfunction or a software glitch which happened in 2019 on the Anna aircraft on the NH985, which landed in Tokyo. And after 6 years, there's been a repetition. There, the people got saved because the aircraft was on ground. This aircraft in the air and landed up in a disaster. It is very immature on the part of the Western media to blame the pilots. And I would strongly condemn it because I have got 50 years of aviation experience, 40 years of training. I have been training pilots in military and in Air India. In India, the pilots are one of the best in the world with any Western nation. So they must understand that maligning the pilots like this is totally unacceptable. And what they're harming and damaging, they're causing fear and psychosis in the minds of the passengers that do not travel by air.
But it's not just about fear and psychosis. Is there another angle or an aspect to it? Now, the fuel valve theory, the FADEC aspect beyond the fuel control switches, can these switches, if they malfunction, Flight Lieutenant Minu Vadia, can they, because the report also, I very clearly know, says that they tried to put it back from cutoff to run. They tried to bring it back and revive the engines, but there was not enough time and the engines didn't revive. So, what happened there is very ambiguous. So, should the AAIB report have been so ambiguous that it leaves so much to doubt and question? There are many who believe that it cannot have happened without a human involvement or a human error. There are others who say it's the fuel valve and the FADEC that could have sent the wrong signals out. Where are you and what is your thought process? Would you want to agree with Terry where he says that there has to have been a certain amount of human involvement?
There's total clarity in whatever information has come out so far. The main problem is interpretation of this data that has come out. To start with, what you have said, and I'll answer your specific question about the switches very clearly also, when it happened, what had happened. But not only immediately after the aircraft crashed, within 2 days, there were foreign media going about mentioning totally absurd information that was not likely at all, and there's no evidence, but they have been emphatic in the sense that we know exactly what has happened. Someone said they've raised the gear lever. Instead of the gear lever, they were the flaps, and that's why the crash has taken place. Some people have gone and blamed the pilots that there was a fight or whatever, etc. These are totally absurd deductions. So therefore, there is no point in your even mentioning this, and it only creates more confusion than anything else. As far as the switches are concerned, yes, what everyone has said, the switches immediately after takeoff, the engines have flamed out. But it is not because the switches have been switched off. No. There is fuel valves have been shut off. However, which is a normal procedure, after the engines have been shut off, it's a normal procedure and the pilots have been trained about it also. It is, the attempt should be made to relight the engines. And that is what the pilots did. And that is what is being misinterpreted as if the pilots put off the switches, which is incorrect totally. So, as Captain Randhawa rightly pointed out, these switches are fail-safe switches that it cannot be operated just like a bathroom switch, putting the light on or your fan on. They have double...
they have that spring lock mechanism. You got to pull it out, then draw it down, and then it goes back in, right?
Different aircrafts have different systems. Some have the spring locks, some have guards on it. So these switches cannot be operated on any of these aircraft, either Airbus or Boeing, just by touching the switch button. So therefore, it requires a positive action to put the switch off or on. So therefore, there is no doubt in my mind that the pilots did anything incorrect at this point of time. If you go through, when people ask me, is it possible for a human error? Yes, many human beings, or all human beings make an error. After all, the topmost judges or topmost lawyers make an error also. But in this case particularly, if you go through the system step by step, the pilots have made no error whatsoever. They've done all the correct actions, and it was beyond their control that the fuel switches have been switched off, and that's why the aircraft went and crashed into those buildings straight ahead.
In fact, one of the international platforms today, Captain Manmat Rautray, has tried to blame it on Captain Sumit Sabharwal. They have blamed the senior pilot. How can they do something like that? Aren't you a little upset about this? Because this whole thing about Captain Sabharwal was suicidal. Captain Sabharwal must have done something. This has been doing the round since the first day. The effort to try and vilify the pilots.
1 second, I'm not surprised at all. After all, there are a lot of large companies and associations who have a lot of vested interest in the findings, what eventually comes out. Therefore, it suits them, it's in their interest to make sure it doesn't go beyond that and the pilots are blamed. They are dead after all, they can't go and defend themselves. So it suits many people to keep on blaming the pilots. Okay. So therefore, I'm not surprised at all by these narrations.
Okay. Minu Wadiaji, I'm just going to go across to Manmat Rautray. Yes, Captain Rautray.
Afternoon, and I've trained under Captain C.S. Randhawa. I've trained under Captain Sabharwal. Both are equally good. They're very, very professional in their job. I have no doubt about Captain Sabharwal's talent, his expertise. There's no way I'm going to believe this report. See, if a war can be stopped for a trade, or about trades, and then some guy can stop a war because of trade. Don't mind my voice because I was in a strike which was happening. Right. But what I was saying is, if trade is so important that wars can be stopped, so why can't trade get this report manipulated? I'm not going to straight away accuse. There's a lot of money at stake. Too many orders for next 20 years Boeing must be having. It's all it's about America. It's about trade and everything. Two simple pilots who are not alive. Just put it on them. And what we have learned, and technically, I'd like to tell you something. When this report does not say something about the health of the both engines, they don't talk about it. So the simple procedure here is there is a memory action, and it is not area bound. When in a phase of the flight, which captain does what, it is mentioned. But in this scenario, when you have two engines issues with thrust, any captain can actually get the fuel control switch to cut off and to run. It won't take more than a second for each. It's not possible to do it in 1 second, but it is not area specific. So even if whoever is the pilot monitoring there, or anybody who notices, and if the pilot of command takes over control, the co-pilot has to. You don't have to wait for a second or anything. Nothing is mentioned. You're just supposed to recycle the fuel control switch to restart the engine, restart the procedure from zero. To try and attempt, because you have nothing, you don't have power in both the engines, so you cannot wait for anything, you cannot wait for a second or anything. You just have to recycle it so that everything restarts. So they are not talking about the health of the engines. So this is a procedure which they have followed. Right. So they have done as former AI captain Captain Wadia said, everything is by procedure. What we have learned, what we have been taught. So putting it into the mental stress, mental conditions of the pilot, what was their personal lives, what they had before 15 years, what was the health conditions, this is all excuses. And those reports, they are incomplete. They have only mentioned about one conversation. What is the conversation before that? That recorder has for about 2 hours of voice recording. Correct. So what happened to those discussions before? What happened to the procedures and checklists and procedures, the call-outs before? They have not mentioned anything about that. How comfortably they were exchanging conversation between them in the cockpit. There's no mention about it. After even if they recycle the engines, they must be talking for the last 15, 20 seconds or 38 seconds. There must be a conversation.
Correct.
There are too many questions.
Not just too many questions.
It's a sad day, sir. Right. I would like to complete. It's a very, very sad day for Indian pilots. We work really hard. So much of effort we put it into. We would like people to look up to us, not to look down on us. Today, what the international, whatever social media, whatever they call themselves aviation experts, without any expertise, without any report, without even with the complete report, they have accused Indian pilots being stressed, in Indian pilots being
because
insane.
it's not just about whether they are Indian pilots or not. It's just generally when there are such aircraft crashes, the inclination or to string the narrative towards a human error and towards a pilot error is far greater. Terry, would you agree, disagree with some of the opinions here on the panel that it's easier to pin it on human error because there is so much at stake when it comes to an aircraft business? These are manufacturers who have got to supply hundreds of aircraft across the world, and there is billions of dollars of business at stake. So one error like this, but one would also have to take into consideration that there was a transducer problem with this aircraft just in its previous leg. And the transducer, please correct me if I'm wrong, that errors with the transducer means that there could be errors with other electrical systems also, or it could trigger faults in other electrical systems within the aircraft, even if the transducer was fixed.
Yeah, I mean, several points there. Excuse me. Yes, I mean, it is obviously, many people have pointed out that it's very easy to blame dead pilots who can't speak for themselves. In theory, of course, the report should be totally impartial. And these are very complex machines, and obviously the potential for electronic problems creating other problems obviously exists. I think in this particular instance, it would be very helpful if the investigators were able to say what they heard on the area microphone on the cockpit voice recorder, because what we've had so far is sentences from the microphone of each pilot. But there is an area microphone, and in other accident investigations, they have been able to tell by sounds on the flight deck which switches and levers were moved. And as one of the previous commentators said, you know, this could be, if we assume that an electrical fault could turn off the fuel at source rather than via the switch, if they could eliminate the fact or say that they could hear sounds that were conducive to being the switches moved, or that there were no sounds, if we could eliminate the possibility of manual selection to cut off, it would help us understand. I suspect that the investigators probably know an awful lot more than they've published in the report, because they won't publish everything until they've absolutely eliminated all possibilities. And at the moment, they're trying to be impartial.
Okay, point taken. Point very well taken that the flight cockpit voice recorder should have more evidence, and that should point us. Now, interestingly, what this report says. Now, if this is not being crafty, then what is? As a layman, this is what I would understand, because it says the aircraft achieved maximum, point number 13, and it says the aircraft achieved in point number 12. Beg your pardon. Point number 12. The paragraph reads, page number 14. The paragraph reads, the aircraft crossed the takeoff, achieved the maximum recorded airspeed of 180 knots IAS at about 8:08:42 UTC. So that's the time code, the standard time code that's usually clocked, so UTC. So 8:08:42 is what it says. What it says is at that speed, it automatically transitioned. It immediately thereafter, engine 1 and engine 2, fuel cutoff switches transitioned from run to cutoff position, one after another with a time gap of 1 second. So Captain Randhawa, this has been recorded very clearly. Okay, so but they don't say whether it was a mechanical transition or a manual transition. They don't mention that. They do not mention, did the pilot monitoring or the pilot in command take control? What was the exchange between the two pilots? Because when these cutoff switches are touched, there should be a communication. What they then say is that in the cockpit voice recording, one of the pilots is heard asking the other, why did he cut off? The other pilot responded that he did not do so. In this case, when they have already in the previous passage, in the previous pages, identified the pilot in command, the co-pilot, the pilot monitoring and the pilot flying very clearly, why couldn't they mention who it was and who it wasn't? Why leave it ambiguous? That's one big question. The other thing is, sir, by the time the EAFR, the engine 1 fuel cutoff switch transitioned from cutoff to run at about 8:08:52, are you trying to say for 10 seconds?
10 seconds, correct.
For 10 whole seconds, the pilots didn't try to revive the engine.
Yes.
They didn't try to do, after realizing that this transition has happened for 10 seconds, there was no reaction. In between all of that, they have said that the rat has come out, hydraulics came back, all of that they have said. Here they are again saying the switch transition from cutoff to run. Again, they don't say whether it was manually done or not. But in the subsequent line, they write that the pilots did try to revive. What do they say there? They say the thereafter 808 engine 2 cutoff switch also transitions from cutoff to run. And and with the aircraft is in flight, each engine at full authority, dual engine control. FADEC automatically manages a relight and thrust recovery sequence of ignition and fuel introduction. So was it the pilots? Did it the system? Where was it? All this has been very clearly pulled back. Why? And immediately after this, we have the DGCA setting out an advisory based on the 2018 FAA advisory that all fuel control switches have to be searched. Boeing issues an advisory. There is an advisory issued by all airlines that there should not be a third person in the cockpit. True or false, Captain Randhawa? All of this happened.
Yes. Now, I'd like to answer your questions one by one. First and foremost thing is the manufacturer has given very clearly that in case of a dual engine flame out, there are two memory actions to be carried out by the pilots. One is, the first one is fuel control switch to cut off and then to run. They don't wait for 10 seconds. The second point is, it is done one by one. And when that happens, a command is given. Fuel control switch left confirm, confirm. Fuel control switch cut off, cut off. Nothing of this sort has happened in the cockpit. So it is not an ordinary switch that you keep playing around. Kids are playing with toys. The second command is about the RAM-S turbine switch. Yeah. On the overhead panel, that has to be put on so that you are absolutely clear that the rat has been deployed. They are not talking anything about the switch. So if the pilots had moved these fuel control switches, then what about the rat switch?
So the rat, they are saying as per EAFR data, both engines N2 values passed below minimum idle speed and the rat hydraulic pump began supplying hydraulic power at about 8:47.
That is done automatically.
Yeah.
That is, the engines have shut down and after that the rat is deployed.
Yeah.
So there is an electronic glitch which has cut off the fuel supply through the fuel control valves. And when that has happened, I am again repeating myself that please treat this accident with the incident which happened on the Anna aircraft. The second point is, which is again I'm highlighting on every channel, no one is paying any attention to the lone survivor. He has made a statement that after the aircraft took off, after some time he found the lights flickering in the cabin. Why should the light flicker? That means there is a power interruption. So I'm correlating to that. No one is paying any attention to what that guy is saying.
But this light flicker is not recorded anywhere. It's not mentioned other than the living witness.
It is not mentioned in the report at all.
Meenu Wadia ji, it's not mentioned. And then why leave, if it's an investigation report that's supposed to be submitted, why leave so many gaps and so many ambiguities? 5 seconds it took before the engine dropped from 180 knots to less than aircraft from 180 knots where the transition is recorded to the time when rat is deployed between 42 and 47. 808:42 and 808:47. Between 808:47 and 808:52 is when the transition is again recorded that the transition happened from cutoff to run again. But who did it? Who said it? Which of the pilots called for Mayday? They have not mentioned. They've just said one of the pilots called for Mayday. Why? Why hold back this information? And can airlines claim that we are clean, nothing's wrong with us? Is it fair to turn the narrative towards the pilots and to what happened in the cockpit?
No one can assume anything at this point in time. Instead of assuming something, which you have asked about the switches, why can't you accept where clear evidence is available? When the pilot says, I have not touched the switches, why can't you believe him totally 100%? Why even have a doubt on that subject to start with? Secondly, as Randhawa rightly pointed out, and I don't want to get into too much technicalities, because if I get into more technicalities, it'll probably confuse the people even more. But there is something called the squat switch on all aircrafts at the oleo, which gives a signal to all the other computers, whether the aircraft is on the ground or in the air. To put it in layman's terminology, for example, when the aircraft is on the ground, and someone in the cockpit, could be a pilot, could be any engineer, could be any worker also, he puts the landing gear up. The landing gear cannot go up because the squat switch is giving information to all the computers that the aircraft is on the ground, and if the gear goes up, it will damage the aircraft. So these are only technical things which help us in correlating why things have happened. That is one thing. And what has happened is that's why the gear hasn't gone up. That is one thing. And the second point is the RAT which is being employed. Yeah. And we can presume fairly with evidence available to us that the fuel shutoff switches have switched off without the pilot's intervention on their own. And there's again evidence on that, as Captain Randhawa twice pointed out to you again. Pay a little more emphasis on those. That's happened in the past. It has happened, and then there are Boeing technicians, engineers who've confirmed that in the past also. And that's happened to in Osaka by All Nippon Airways also. So there's nothing unusual that this is the first time it has ever happened. It will never happen again. These are glitches that need to be seen. Now, again, you will ask whether it was sabotage, whether it was interfered. We don't know these things at this point in time. So there's no point in speculation.
No, but,
let the evidence
I'm just saying that, are you in your head convinced that this is not human error? Because Terry believed that there could have to be a certain level of human involvement or human error for such a thing to occur. But the RAT deploying means that there is a total electrical failure. Marry that with the eyewitness saying that there were flickering of lights. So if I just switch off the fuel control switches, that doesn't mean that there is an air control electrical failure. Or is it because both the engine shut off that RAT deployed? Because engine shut off, there will be no electricity and RAT gets deployed. Captain Manmat Rautre, on day one when the crash happened, there was a vilification attempt and trying to pin it on Captain Sumit Sabharwal. He was pilot monitoring. That's what we given to understand. He was the PIC. And now again, a few days after the report is out, again the effort is to try and pin it on Captain Sumit Sabharwal. Your thoughts, final word.
We had no doubt that they're going to come for the pilots. No doubt in our mind. We all discussed among ourselves. I'm sure they're going to find out some or the other way to get the pilots in somehow, some mistake, somehow, save some of your insurance money, save some of your orders, try to save some of your billions of dollars of future planning for Boeing. It's after all America, so you just can't play around. There are a lot of trades going on. We are just a small players in them. Two pilots not there to defend themselves, So technically, like what Captain Randhawa said, that's perfectly what he's already explained everything about. Yeah, I would like to mention just one more small technical thing about here. There's an engine electronic computer, EEC. The EEC, there are two engine valves, one on the wing, that's called the spare valve, one on the engine. These two valves have to be open for the fuel to get in. That engine valve, that is totally controlled by the EEC. You have no direct control. Fuel control switches control the spare valve in the wings. But this one valve is completely computerized. It's beyond your control. It is computerized, it's programmed. The igniters are programmed. Everything is done by the EEC. There can be fluctuations, there can be software issues. Beyond the physical movement of the key, there can be some other movement by the software which has been recorded. Experts can talk about it. I'm telling you, this works via the computer. This only works via the software. Right. So, and sensors in the engines. So we are still not clear that when the fuel control switches were cut off as per them, what was the status of the engine then? That second, that microsecond. What was the status of the engine? Were they working? They were below N2 or what? There's no mention about it. They talk about it later when trying to recover it. So everything is ambiguous. There's no continuity of the report.
See, the point is, by saying leaving it open to interpretation by many, there is also this entire narrative setting game that is happening, which is very unfortunate. I thank all our panelists and leave with our viewers with this thought that could the DGCA and the AAIB have been a little more clear on the direction of the probe rather than being so ambiguous. There are many who are asking, who are the people who are sitting on this? Who are the signatories to this? Because this report report has not even been signed by anybody.
Presented by This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Aviation sources have revealed to CNN News 18 that all mechanical and technical aspects are being investigated. The fuel switch cannot move without human intervention, but it is being probed if the fuel valve malfunctioned due to some technical or mechanical reasons. Let's go back to our colleague Arunima to understand more. Arunima, over to you.
So I tried to explain to you why fuel valve is suddenly in focus, because there is consensus that the fuel control switch cannot move without human intervention. Yet it seems that the AIB has concluded that the reason the Ahmedabad crash happened is because of engine losing thrust, and the engine lost thrust because fuel was not available. Why was fuel not available? If you see the pictures that have been posted in the AIB report, it's very clearly showing that the switch was in the run position. So the SOP was followed by the pilots. The SOP is, if your engine is losing power, you move the fuel control switch from cutoff to run, and try and cut off and then relight, and that is what has been done in this case as well. So SOP has been followed. The question is, why was fuel not available to the engine? If the fuel switch had not been moved manually, what else could have possibly happened? And that is why the focus is now moving to the fuel valve. The word transition, some of the pilots who have been with us on our shows have also said that the word transition is more apt for the fuel valve rather than the fuel switch, because the switch just moves from on to off. It has to move from run to cut off. There's no transition. The word for the switch is move. If AIB has used the word transition, could it be an indication of the fuel valve? And the reason is because of that malfunction that we just spoke about. The pilot report gave that error message, stab POS XDCR. It does not impact your fuel switch directly. But the question is, did it impact the overall sensors of the aircraft in any way? If it impacted the overall sensor and it went unnoticed, did it in any way impact the softwares that are meant to be running this fully automated aircraft? The two technical terms that I have been given, the thrust control malfunction accommodation, TCMA, and the full authority digital intent control, FADEC. Together, I'm told they can even function without taking the command of the pilot. That's the key area where the focus seems to be right now.
Okay, Arunima, we did explain this to our audience earlier, but I almost want you to break it down for us in layman terms. What is a fuel valve, and how is understanding what a fuel valve is and how it correlates to this different from what the switch's purpose was?
So just think of your vehicle in layman's term, because we're all car drivers. Let me try and explain it to you in terms of how a car moves. When we are talking about a fuel switch, we move it from run to cut off. Exactly what happens is that there is a fuel tank, there's a fuselage, and there's a valve there which is operated. When you're moving the switch to run, the valve is operational. When you're moving it to cut off, it means the valve shuts down and the engine does not get any fuel. That's what it means. That's what the action of the fuel switch is. What if the fuel valve starts acting independent of the fuel switch? What if there is a software malfunction which completely disassociates the switch from the valve? Pilots I spoke to said that this is very rare, but it is not an impossible situation. It is not a possibility that can be completely denied. And the reason they are saying it is exactly the two terms that I told you about, FADEC and the thrust control mechanism, completely software driven, automated, not in the hands of the pilot. Was there some problem there? Did some sensor malfunction affecting the overall electricals, overall software, leading to an issue with the valve? We don't know. A lot of speculation. We want AIB to give us the final details. But I can tell you after speaking to sources and aviation experts that this is also a focus area.
Okay, Arunima, we are going to come back to you in a second. Stay with us, please. We have more breaking news coming in this same story. We're learning that the Federation of Indian Pilots has now expressed concern regarding the preliminary findings and the public discourse that has surrounded the findings. They've said that assigning blame before a thorough, transparent and data-driven investigation is premature and irresponsible. Let's just go over to our colleague Arunima to understand more. Arunima, similar to other pilot bodies and what they've come to our show and said in the last few days, can you bring us more context?
If you can repeat that, there was a problem with my...
Yes.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Trade wars, military wars, cola wars, and one man at the center of them all, Donald Trump. The United Nations says he's slowing down the global economy. Surprised? Neither are we. In West Asia, the threat of another war. Why did Israel wade into a tribal clash in Syria? In Pakistan, will Asim Munir swap his uniform for the presidency? And will Donald Trump visit him later this year? In India, what explains the big bet on oil exploration? What's our plan if Trump sanctions Russian oil? I spoke to the petroleum minister earlier today. We will bring you excerpts of that interview. In Bangladesh, deadly clashes again. 4 killed, 14 arrested. We look at how the country remains caught in a cycle of violence almost a year since Sheikh Hasina left. Meanwhile, Trump has a new mission: make Coke great again. He's now tweaking cola recipes